this is the most important slide in the whole presentation. This proposal will not increase your property tax rate. Those of you who followed the Granite bond election last year, that's what we're doing. Now, let me be clear about that so there's no confusion. Those of you who live in the district, remember that you had a new line on your property tax notice last year that said Jordan debt or old Jordan debt on it. That's going to stay on there for the next 13 years until that's paid off, because we still have about $250 million in principal and interest to pay off on that 2003 bond. And so what will happen this year is that our debt service levy, the property tax that we levy to pay that off, will actually go up one more time between now and when you get your property tax notice in November, because this next year is the high point of the payment on the old Jordan bond. But once that is set, we won't go above that. As the Jordan debt gets paid off, we'll start issuing bonds up to the limit of what we can pay. In other words, we're not going to raise our credit card limit, right? We're not going to jack up our property tax rates to issue more debt. We're issuing the debt that we can pay given our current tax structure. So that's very important. Next. We will engage the community in the design of these buildings. So we'll be working with teachers, we'll be working with parents, we'll be working with school community councils as we sit down with architects and look at what these schools will be, what they'll look like, how they'll be used, and so forth. And I will just mention that there are just some really fascinating and interesting things happening with school design right now in terms of LEED buildings, environmental, high quality environmental designs of buildings, and all kinds of innovations. And it's a pretty exciting time. There's a lot of things. It used to be that if you were to design an elementary school, for example, there weren't a whole lot of interesting plans to choose from, but that's not the case anymore. Now, we have $650 million in need to address. That's what our architects have determined. They went through every school and looked at every broken faucet that needs to be fixed, every light fixture that needs to be fixed, all the broken asphalt that needs to be fixed, all the roofs that need to be fixed, and the price tag for that's $650 million. So if the board decided to wait for 10 years until all the Jordan debt was paid off and then go out to bond, it'd still be a huge project. And in the meantime, we'd still have a lot of deferred maintenance stacking up. So the board decided to go ahead and let's address what we can now. So this is a starting place. This is not the end. This is going to be a 10 or 15 or maybe even 20-year project to address all of this deferred maintenance in the district. So this is just the first 5 or 6 year window. It's the first couple of laps around the track, if you will. But we're going to start with what we can afford, and that's $250 million. And the board has prioritized some projects that they feel best fit or best match these innovation and modernization priorities that we talked about a few minutes ago. So you can see the list of projects here. Let me just go through these quickly. Butler Elementary, Midvale Elementary, Sandy Elementary, Albion Middle School, Butler Middle School, Crescent View Middle, Indian Hills Middle, Midvale Middle, Mount Jordan Middle, Brighton High, Hillcrest High, a new high school in Draper, and then an elementary school in the White City area, which is still to be determined. So you can see that most of the projects on here are secondary schools. Virtually every middle school, with the exception of Union, will get a major overhaul in terms of air conditioning, seismic upgrades, technology upgrades, and so forth. And then Butler, Midvale, and Mount Jordan are slated for complete rebuilds. So, and then of course the high school is the single biggest project there. The reason for that, again, being that we cannot move ninth graders up into Alta. Well, I guess we could, but we'd have to add 30 portables down there, and nobody's real enthused about that. So the bottom line is that Draper is a city of almost 50,000 people. It's not a little tiny town anymore, and it's going to continue to grow. And I am sympathetic to the desire of the mayor and the residents out there to have a community school, a secondary school around which their community can gather. Now, some of you may remember that for a long time the discussion was around a middle school out there. But we think, given all of the factors that we've discussed here today, it makes most sense to put a high school out there. Now, it's not going to be as big as Alta is. It's probably going to be a small to medium-sized high school, but that will be really important and critical for us in order to do this grade reconfiguration. The first 4 projects that are slated to start are Butler Middle, Albion Middle, Midvale Elementary, and Sandy Elementary. Sandy Elementary just needs some seismic work done to it that was not done when the school was renovated a few years ago after the fire. We just discovered that, much to our chagrin actually, when our architects went in there to assess the building. So it's not a major project, it's just going in and completing what should have been done a few years ago. So that's where we'll start, and the rest of those projects, the high school is also on there. The high school will be one of the first ones started too. Let me just address very quickly a question I'm sure you probably have, which is, when would the grade reconfiguration take place? And my answer to that is, at the very earliest, it would be the 2013-2014 school year, because we're not likely to begin construction on the high school until probably this time next year, and then it's 2 years to get that high school done from the time you break ground to the time it's ready to open. So we're hoping that we can have everything started, or everything completed and ready to open and grades shifted by the 2013-2014 school year. And in the meantime, we'll be working with teachers and parents and administrators across the district to address all the issues that need to be addressed to make sure that's a smooth transition. So we'll just finish by reminding you about the date of the election again, June 22nd, June 22nd, June 22nd. And we hope you'll get out and vote, encourage your neighbors and friends to do the same. And I'll stop there and take any questions that you might have.